singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, tweet.
Welcome to Life is Good. I'm Heather McEwen, your ever-loving hostess, as you know, or you may not know, but I'm glad you're watching. We're having a really good time today because we're going to be talking to one of my favorite types of people, an aviation person. He's a 24-year-old pilot from Philadelphia and parts beyond, and has been all over the world and has done many interesting things. So pay attention because I'm going to learn a lot here. And we're going to talk about how wonderful it will be for any of you who are interested to get into aviation, to go to your very own little Newport, what is it, Northeast Kingdom International Airport, right over in Coventry, and get you over there and get you up in the air because you've been there.
Oh yeah.
This is Rocky Breslow. Mr. Breslow, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm a computer programmer. I'm a licensed pilot, and I like aviation, and I love Vermont.
Okay, tell us how you ended up landing here at one point.
I was on an adventure with another pilot friend who lives in New Jersey, who I met, and we were planning on coming up to Mount Washington, actually, for the 4th of July.
Oh.
And so that was its own whole adventure, and when that adventure was over, it was still before sunset, and I had an idea that we should fly across the Canadian border and draw like USA in the sky, because it was the 4th of July. And it turned out that Newport was the closest airport to the Canadian border, and so we used Newport as kind of our staging ground.
Now you said spell it in the sky. Did you have one of those smoke makers that would actually do that?
No, but we had our iPad, and I drew like the letters, and so we just flew the track, USA.
No, aren't you glad you don't live in Kazakhstan or something like that? It's easier to spell.
Right.
I mean, we're going to end up in Newfoundland, but we're going to spell this right across the sky.
Right.
Amazing. So that was satisfying. Did you land here?
Yeah, we did.
Tell us a little bit about what your impression was of our little airport.
Well, we came in probably 10 at night, and so...
That's when we come to life here.
That's when you come to life. So it was very dark, but it felt like a little oasis, like awaiting us after flying in an even darker place, which was the Quebec forests, basically.
Yeah.
But one thing that was really magical was it was the 4th of July, and it was 10 at night. So as we're coming in, it's pitch black besides the runway lights, and then little off-gassings of the earth of fireworks all over the place.
Did you stay overnight, or did you just do a touch and go?
No, we landed and needed to get fuel, and miraculously there was an instructor with his student, and so they had the FBO open at that time, like the local little airport building, and so we went in and had a really lovely conversation with them, and then kind of rested up for the 6 hours of flying maybe that we had to do to get home.
Where's home? Philadelphia, 6 hours?
Maybe it wasn't quite 6. That airplane was based out of Lakewood, New Jersey. So
Okay.
home for us at that point was Lakewood, which is kind of near the Sandy Hook corner of New Jersey, near New York City.
Yeah, not the best place to be, Sandy Hook,
No.
at all. Are you affiliated with anybody who went through Sandy Hook?
Well, so that Sandy Hook is a geographic point of New Jersey, not the Sandy Hook where the tragedy happened.
All right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's like a just sandy
Sandy
peninsula.
Hook.
Oh, yeah, it's a Sandy Hook, exactly.
Very good.
Yes,
Sand-
yes. It's a
sandbar.
state park, and it's pretty.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, you started flying at what age?
I was 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
But similar to what you told me, I had an experience when I was a kid where someone took me up. And
Tell me about that.
Dad's friend, local airport in Philadelphia, hey, why don't you come flying and take your son? And he let me, just as you showed me, he let me take the controls, and I never forgot that day.
Yeah.
I still don't.
Yeah. I was 11 when I started flying with my dad.
Okay.
I was his co-pilot. And he always let me take the controls.
Yeah.
And then I did ground school when I was 18.
Okay.
But then my father wouldn't allow me to go all the way because ladies don't do that. You can be the co-pilot forever, but ladies do not become pilots, Heather.
But you need to become a pilot to be the co-pilot.
Well, I was an unofficial co-pilot for all my friends and an unofficial co-pilot for my dad.
Okay.
And at that point, I thought I had no choice.
Hmm.
So you've seen a tremendous change that wasn't available when I was growing up.
Right.
Because it's pretty much non-gender conforming at any point in this industry now. And I'm
Right.
really, really happy for the girls who are learning how to become pilots.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're here in the Northeast Kingdom and you would like to become a pilot, you could become really good. Just head on over to the local Newport terminal. It's in Coventry, and get started. You talked to somebody about 10 o'clock at night,
I did.
and they had a student, so they were learning night flying?
They were doing probably their night flights for their private pilot's license.
Yeah.
And I just like, you can get a sense for just a person based on their energy or however, and I liked the dynamic that was going on between them. The student-instructor relationship is very important.
If you were going to work remotely, would you like to come here?
Oh yeah. I've always dreamed of living in Vermont.
Would you want to live close to our airport?
I would, that's a requirement for me. I would need to live.
Well, I'd like you to keep Northeast Kingdom in mind.
Okay.
Northeast Kingdom in general, Newport in particular.
Yeah.
We love it when you young people come with all your energy and intelligence and education and plant yourselves here to enjoy what we have.
Right.
And I'm glad you do. You've told me a little bit about a goal you had at one point to island hop, etc., getting to Europe.
Yes.
Why don't you tell our audience about that? Because I love that story.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the premise was that I've really always wanted to fly a small plane to Europe, and I've kind of said I'm never going to go visit Europe until I'm able to do that. And that's that goal is still there, but it's a very difficult goal.
It's a limiting goal.
It's a limiting goal. And I met a girl in the U.S. who's from Norway, and we were talking about this, this idea that I had, and she told me about this island chain near where she lives. She lives in Buda, Norway, which is slightly above the Arctic Circle, and there's an island chain called the Lofoten Islands. And her and I flew over Long Island in the U.S., so from Philadelphia up New York City, all across Long Island to Montauk. And just her telling me about this island chain, and she kind of tweaked my perspective that maybe you can come to Europe and fly just here. You don't need to fly yourself to Europe because that's very expensive and insurance, and for a variety of reasons is very difficult to do. And so she kind of sparked this adventure and idea in my mind that, okay, we flew Long Island here. I'm going to get to Europe, get a European pilot's license.
How long did that take?
There was a lot of research that I had to do when I was here, but once I actually formulated the plan and made some contacts, it took me about a month to finish.
Good for you. Anyway, continue. I interrupted you for that question.
Fine. Well, it's a good question too, because when I actually showed up I'm trying to think. I'll finish by saying, so she sparked the idea of doing this whole adventure to get there, because I wanted to fly her across the island chain near where she lives, because I thought that would just be so crazy. She'd never expect me to actually go through it. And so then I was going to say, with how long was it going to take? So I work for an aviation company. I work for like a small wing of Boeing, actually.
Oh, a small wing of Boeing.
Small wing of Boeing.
That's really funny.
Right.
How big are they? You told me. Well, I'm just working on a tiny wing. And the other ones are big.
Right.
No, seriously. So now we'll talk about Boeing.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Well, yes, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on with Boeing. Now continue,
Yes.
and then we'll talk.
So,
and by the way, this young lady's name, coincidentally, was Amelia.
Yes.
And that is my heroine, Amelia Earhart.
Yes.
And it's so amazing how these things are.
It's how the world works, and
Totally.
how one moment you meet someone and now this whole adventure begins.
Always.
So I bring up my company because the first thing I do when I'm trying to figure out how to get a European pilot's license, do we have any European pilots? And we do. We have someone named Seppo who lives in Helsinki. And so I reached out to Seppo, and Seppo said, well, I know an examiner, here's his name, maybe he can help you, figure out what you need to do, basically.
Yeah.
And so I made an appointment to meet with this guy, show up in Helsinki, call him, oh, sorry, I'm busy, I can't help you anymore. Click. It's like, well, now I'm in Helsinki, I need to get my European pilot's license, and my lifeline has just abandoned me. And so I think I was actually out riding a bike around the city when I got the news, and so very quickly had to find someone else. And thank God this first guy canceled on me, because then you meet the next most amazing person.
Who was it?
It's Kari Tarhanen, who is another examiner, worked for the Finnish equivalent of our FAA.
Wonderful.
And I basically spent the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, every moment with Kari. And
Did
he
you
was
simulator
ecstatic.
training before they allowed you up?
Oh no. Actually, the first day I meet Kerry, it's in like a public square in Helsinki. Like I'm looking for this guy who's supposed to be a pilot. And I see him, I said, "Okay, hey Kerry, where do we begin?" And he says, "You're coming with me, we're doing your single engine check ride right now." I said, "Right now? I haven't flown in like a month maybe now, because I've been traveling."
It's muscle memory.
No preparation, like don't we have to do an oral exam? He says, "We'll do your oral exam in the car, you'll get there, you're gonna pass, I guarantee you." And so he partly...
Don't you want to give me a drug test? Nothing like that? Anything to grab time.
Well, the confidence he had in me was, I don't know. He was awesome. And that
If you're that interested,
right.
You can tell. I mean, I knew you had a passion for aviation the first 5 minutes we spoke.
Right.
Maybe it's because I have a passion for it too, even though I don't fly anymore.
Right.
I think it's wonderful and it's very contagious.
It's contagious. I mean, you can hear the people, the relationships you're meeting. Now I'm in this, he had a station wagon. We're driving through the Finnish countryside. He's this examiner who has, years and years and years of experience flying airplanes. And I'm like, how did I get here? Oh yeah, this very strange swing of connections all through aviation.
Blame Amelia.
Right. It all is Amelia's fault at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's wonderful. But did you have the aircraft that you wanted? What did they put you into?
All the planes in Europe are really beat up because flying there is really expensive, and the regulatory environment means that maintenance is very expensive, and forget upgrades. So it was that was a Cessna 150, which was the first time I ever flew a Cessna 150.
Really?
Smallest.
How does it compare to the Piper? Besides highly low wing.
It feels like you went from driving like a BMW or even just a Toyota normal car to I'm driving a go-kart.
I'm a Cessna person. I resent that.
Well, a 172 feels normal. A 150 is extremely lethargic, especially a 150 where everything is rattling at the seams.
That's all it does, and they're never insulated, right? I'm not going above 10,000 feet or anything. We can stay warm no matter where we are. And also, it's like 54 miles an hour stall, something like that.
It's something ridiculously
slow. You don't get picked up for speeding in a Cessna 150.
No, I felt very safe though, because I knew, if I lost my engine, there's any number of Finnish lakes and fields and this and that, and we're going like a feather. So
yeah. Forget you, Miracle on the Hudson. Look at me. I'm in a Cessna 150 and I'm landing on Lake Ergonogorf.
He actually did that. He did something that no instructor's ever done before. He, part of the it's EASA is the European FAA. Part of the test for a single engine rating there is I guess some simulated emergency landing. Mm-hmm. So he pulled the engine, which is normal. I've done in the U.S. too. But he let me get maybe 10 feet above the ground. He let me fly it all the way to where that emergency landing site was going to be. All safe, of course, but I had never actually been pushed to see, am I actually going to make it?
Well, if you didn't look at him and go, ah, right, then you pass.
I didn't look at him and go, ah. I was calm. We would have made it. We would have been in a farm field. Maybe we would have, hurt the nose gear or something. But then as soon as we're at that field, I said, okay, go around, you're all good. It was amazing.
And then what was the next test? That's your single engine rating. Then you have to have a night rating or an instrument rating?
No, my night rating carries over. It was instrument rating. I also have a multi-engine rating though, and I wanted to carry that over. And so the next test was, he happens to own, one of the only twin-engine piston aircraft in Finland, I guess.
What was it?
It was a Piper Twin Comanche.
I haven't heard that name for a long time.
Had its own story. The owners bought it from the U.S. and ferried it all the way to Europe. They flew it back to Oshkosh and then flew it back to Finland.
They went to fly in at Oshkosh?
Yes, from Finland in their Piper Twin Comanche that's falling apart from the 60s again. That plane was a little nerve-wracking to fly, but at least it had 2 engines.
Yeah, at least.
Because again, they're all falling apart, and it hadn't flown in 2 months when we turned the engine on, and et cetera, et cetera.
Did you check the oil for it?
Yes, I checked the oil. I did the most extensive pre-flight I've ever done on
I know. There's water in the gas. Doesn't matter. There's gas in the engine. Oh my God!
That's but also he's an air safety inspector. He works for the Finnish FAA called Traficom. So, hey, you're the air safety inspector.
Okay, I'll tell you something about the FAA. Yeah. We are very fortunate to have it.
We are.
My brother-in-law was working in Nigeria.
Yeah.
He retired, then he became a banker over there. And he got into Dana Air on June 3rd, 2012, and died with 156 other people, I believe there were. They have no FAA. They have no, they don't outsource their mechanics. They just
No.
throw someone in there with a screwdriver and say, make it work.
Right.
And the pilot didn't want to take it off. You know,
Right.
just, no, it doesn't, I don't want to fly this aircraft. They said, fly it or you're out of a job. And he was a horrible pilot anyway.
Right.
Totally horrible pilot, but they didn't care that he'd been sanctioned here. They
Right.
hired him over there. There's no FAA.
Oh no, and the FAA does their own evaluations on what they call third country civil aviation organizations, and they evaluate them to see how well do they conform to ICAO standards, and so they'll give you the list of these are the countries that are less than stellar, these are the countries that meet FAA standards.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Nigeria doesn't.
I'm sure it doesn't.
Dana Air went out of business,
Yeah,
but the government put it back in business 6 months later,
yeah,
and there was no compensation offered to any customer.
yeah. No, we're ridiculously fortunate, and
yeah.
so are the Europeans to have their regulatory environment.
Totally. And so I will warn you folks, really do your research before you get on an aircraft in Africa or in a non-European country that might not have any limits.
Even in the United States. Well, not a commercial aircraft, but
No.
if we're talking about flight training, for example, at little small airports, you even need to do your due diligence there.
Yeah, I know we're good here.
I'm sure. But every
Because I said so.
every airport, you never know how maintenance is being done, and general aviation in the U.S. is conducted on a much less stringent standards than transport category operations.
Well, generally, yeah, of course.
And so maintenance regimes can be much lower. I mean, it's basically your mechanic's signature.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your mechanic is unscrupulous, or just, some mechanics don't do as high of a quality job.
You don't need the ailerons because I said so.
Right, you don't need, then the FAA's regulations don't protect you from that necessarily.
That is true. And I'd never thought of that.
Yeah.
Every night my father would sit there with his binder
Right.
and enter the accident reports received in Canada. And it happened every night, and it was pilot error, pilot error, pilot error, pilot error.
Or pilot error because they overlooked something that they really shouldn't have.
And it's hard to react like you did. When he let you go down 10 feet above the ground when you were being tested, panic would ensue in a lot of people.
Well, you have to stay calm, and that's what it's baked. Panic would have ensued in me if it was my first 40 hours or something, but I have a lot more experience, so I know it's fine.
Get your practice in, folks. Build up your hours.
Oh yeah.
And
it's scary the first time, but you push through.
yeah. Let's talk about what we were talking about earlier, the limits in smaller airports, and how some handle it by just letting the trees grow. And
Or minimums and stuff like that.
Yeah, minimum limits. You've flown into our airport,
Yeah.
2 runways. You flew in at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You thought it was great. But there are certain issues with our airport that would make it difficult for a larger aircraft to make a circle if they had to come in on a different heading.
Sure.
So you were talking about basic ways to alleviate this problem.
Yeah.
So please tell me again.
Well, I'm not an airport engineer.
But you have some good ideas that I've never heard of because I don't speak that language as an engineer.
Well, and I would have to go and look and see what approaches are available now. But if I remember correctly, it was just like a GPS approach. You can just pay to have a better GPS approach designed. Some approaches just have LNAV minima, which is kind of a lower level of precision. And it's just because they didn't pay the $10,000 or whatever you have to pay to the engineering firm to redevelop it with newer GPS technologies that are available.
Would that just come into effect with the upgrade by that much if we don't have it already? Would that be an upgrade that would only pertain to smaller aircraft?
No.
So it's a general upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, if you pay to have an approach studied and it has what's called LPV minima, it's like localized, or it's equivalent to an ILS, which is a more standard thing that you'd have at a bigger airport. Depending on obstacle clearance and there's a lot of it depends. Depending on a geological survey, it can apply to all. I have seen some airports, runways really small, maybe there's an issue with the missed approach that LPV minima only apply to certain categories of aircraft.
Yeah.
But that's not the norm. That's the exception.
Okay. Well, these are good things. My vocabulary is limited on this.
Right.
And so it was good to know that perhaps not Newport, I don't know what we have out there yet. I'm about to learn it later today. Scott Winnick will be doing either the next part of this show or would have already spoken with me. I don't know how this is going to be edited, but I hope some of these things are addressed by the expert,
Right.
our local expert.
Or maybe it's just removing obstacles from the approach path. You know, maybe it's someone has a property and they have some really tall trees and it's close to the airport and it's within that, I forget what it's called. It's a part of the federal regulations, but it's the obstacle clearance surface. Maybe they're like, I don't want to cut down my tree or da 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 da. Maybe they, you just have to figure out how to cut down that guy's tree so we can lower minima.
Well, we'll just put an A320 on it.
Right.
Did you see the A320 in France when they were going up for their at an air show?
The one that stalled?
Yes.
Yes, I've read about that.
Oh, unbelievably. Airbus is supposed to be the safest of aircraft.
Yeah.
And I felt very comfortable in Airbus.
If I remember, it was pilot error, as most of these things are.
I'm going to watch that again.
Pilot error combined with maybe inadequate training on how the Airbus was going to react in the conditions that they put it in.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Mind you, every pilot at JetBlue is absolutely fabulous. But we do A320 and A330.
Yeah.
And then we've got a few Embraers thrown in there from Brazil.
Right.
But we had E190s, Embraer 190.
Yeah.
But when we first got them, we were the first airline that had Embraer. So we called it the E180 because it would turn back to the gate most of the time.
Because of an issue or something.
We had to tweak something. I say we, the pilots and maintenance had to tweak, but
E180.
because we always come back to the hangar.
Hello. Just come back, yeah.
Yep.
If you don't feel sure about something.
Ladies and gentlemen, where do you want to go today? And you're here.
And you're here.
Yeah, we had a good time with that one. But you felt turbulence in the E190. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Scary turbulence in an E190, although they're very stable aircraft.
Yeah.
You just do feel what you're going through.
Well, as the passenger, for me, and the turbulence, I love it. I'm like, ooh, I'm a kid in a candy shop, but my passenger who doesn't know that the plane's totally within its flight envelope and everything's normal, most people do not like it.
I know. Famous six-sack. Yes, that came in handy a lot of times. Not for
Yes.
me particularly. My brother would get sick every time he went up, so he stopped flying with my dad. And my mother was still living when Dad started flying, and a very delicate woman.
Yeah.
And a bibliophile. So she was a great reader and great historian. She knew everything about everything from books.
Yeah.
And then she looked at my father when he said, "We're going up today." And my poor little mom strapped her into the front seat. And she said to my dad when he was going through his checklist,
Yeah.
"Don't you know how to fly it?" And my mom thought he was actually looking at instructions to start the thing.
Oh, I see.
And she said, I'd take the kids and we'll just go home. But she had a good flight. But my brother always got sick.
Oh.
But, that doesn't, I'm sorry I'm telling you all these stories, but aviation brings up story after story after story.
Story after story.
What's one more you can tell me?
It's one more story.
Something that sticks out in your mind.
I mean, I can tell you.
Okay, tell me.
Right, I can. Oh man, well now I could share two things.
Okay.
Maybe one recent. Oh, man. Now you think of adventure after adventure after adventure, but probably the most recent adventure that I still I can't believe that happened was I was staying in Denmark. I lived there for a little over a month earlier this year, so around March. And I do couch surfing, if you've ever heard of that. So I host travelers at my home in Philly. And I had hosted this German kid maybe about a year ago. And in the town I was in Denmark, of course, I joined the local flying club and bought a share of the Cessna that they had with my Finnish pilot's license. And I called up my friend in Germany, he lives in Berlin, and I said, hey, I have access to a Cessna now. I'm a few hours north of you. Let me pick you up. Let's go to Prague. Prague.
Prague.
I've never been to Germany or the Czech Republic, and I just thought that would be...
But you've been to Oklahoma.
Right. So flew there. That journey was incredible for other reasons. I mean, there was weather leaving Denmark. There's a lot of weather in that region in general. So if you make a flight, you kind of have to... You're not going to get the perfect day. And I'm an instrument-rated pilot, and I have a lot of instrument experience, which is when you fly in bad weather and clouds. But the aircraft I was in was not certified for instrument flight. And so it was kind of it was a fun trip to make because there was a lot of, all right, deviating around this, deviating around this. I'm in a foreign country right now looking at foreign navigational charts. And there was a moment where I had to cross this small body of water from Denmark to Germany, and I was out of radio contact and radar contact of Denmark, just because that's the limit there, and I couldn't reach Germany. And so there was this 10-mile stretch I was going to have to cross without comms, and I was also having poor GPS reception. And so there was a moment where I plotted the course on my map, calculated, all right, I should make this turn, I will hit in 10 miles, you know, this stretch of landmass in Germany, and there will be a very clear road to find there. But it was this moment where I'm just relying on my primary skills.
Yes.
And then maybe about 5 minutes of no contact, dead reckoning, boom, I'm in Germany. And there's the road and the most beautiful flight to Berlin. And I picked my friend up and we made it to Prague, and that's a whole other adventure of coordinating how to land at Prague. They do not get small aircraft, and in the US, you can basically just show up at most of these places. At Prague, no, there's coordinating with the slot manager and the this and the that and getting the permit and being allowed to park.
You did this before takeoff?
Yeah, this was all planning I had to do on the ground.
Of course.
There was more planning on the ground than I probably ever had to do on any flight to make this all happen.
Well worth it though.
Well worth it.
I mean, Prague.
For this.
Beautiful.
And to say, like, I took this Cessna here, and it was I went through every aircraft in Europe has a journey logbook, and all the airports in like Northern Europe have an E prefix to them, just like in Canada it's a C, or in the US it's a K. Prague was an L prefix, I guess because it's in Southern Europe or something like that. And I went through the journey logbook, I couldn't find a single L airport in there. So it was the first time someone had even taken that aircraft so far south from its home in Odense, Denmark. But I bring up this adventure because as soon as I get back, the solar eclipse is happening. That happened earlier in April. And I had promised my dad and another friend of ours that I would take them on a solar eclipse flight.
And you went to Sherbrooke for that?
And we went to Sherbrooke. So I'm bringing flying back to Denmark from this whole adventure, have a flight out of Copenhagen the next day, all the way to JFK, train to JFK. Then the day after that, we have the plane. And we don't know if we'll end up in Vermont, at Newport, for
25,000 people came. We had 97 small aircraft and two large aircraft landing at our airport that day.
I think, so I was coordinating on the KLM flight back from Europe to the US. I was having my friend who I was flying with call all these airport managers to see what's parking going to be like. And I think we called Newport and they might have said, like, get lost, you're crazy, we have no space at all for you.
Well, we filled up everything, of course, but
Yeah.
I think one of your friends had his aircraft here, the Dakota.
If it was our Dakota, they could have been. Someone flew our Dakota up here.
That's
Yes.
a Piper aircraft. How many does it seat?
4.
Yeah.
4, yeah. It's like a Cherokee, which is a little bit smaller, but it has a much more powerful engine. So the Dakota is my favorite airplane.
Well, everybody talked about it. I was just
Yeah.
working the tourist thing at the airport and Newport in between.
Yeah.
And kind of being a hostess. And I heard them talking about the Dakota, and well, they were just raving about it.
Right.
But whether or not they had just seen it and wanted to talk about it, because that's all we did was talk aircraft all day.
Yeah.
But that really stuck out in my mind as one that was a favorite.
It's cool. It's just unusual. You just don't see them a lot. Yeah, we would have come here, but it was actually, we flew to Portland, Maine, and we made the call there where we were going to end up. I had pre-filed customs forms and stuff for us to go to Canada in case we ended up doing that. We were basically calling airport managers, actually in flight. I had my passenger calling it. It was connected to the Bluetooth in the plane.
That was your dad?
This was my doctor. My doctor was the co-pilot, for weird story there, and my dad was in the back. My doctor was calling all these places, and I had a hunch that no one's really going to be crossing the border to go to Canada, because that's a lot of work and most private pilots don't know how to do that or are intimidated by it. And I had a hunch that the general aviation scene in Canada is much smaller than it is here, so Sherbrooke's got to have a space for us. And sure enough, we called the manager. He said, well, we do. If you commit to coming, we've got a space for you. And I'm so glad we did because that was incredible.
Yeah.
Sherbrooke was the place to see it.
Well, unless you were in Newport.
Unless you were in Newport, I
We
would
had
have
25,000 people. We had to close the town at 11 o'clock in the morning.
See, but that's intimidating though. That's
Why?
25,000 people is a lot, and especially from an air traffic standpoint.
Oh, yes, well, they didn't all come by plane.
They didn't all come by plane, but when we took off from Sherbrooke, we were on an IFR flight plan, which is an instrument flight plan, which means we're in the ATC system. Canada handed us over to the US system, and we were at about 10,000 feet, and I'm looking at my iPad where I can see all these other planes, and it was like I don't know, it was like out of a movie or a mass migration. I saw just hundreds of planes
Hundreds
below
of aircraft,
me,
yeah.
and I heard them all on the radio trying to get ATC services. Every one of them was denied because they were so task saturated. But because we were handed off from Canada, we were already in the system. And so when I say Sherbrooke was the way to do it, it was a zoo. The amount of people that came out to see this.
Yeah. Right after we had totality,
Yeah.
the aircraft started taking off.
Yep.
Because most people stayed at the airport
Yep.
to watch it right there. And I was so proud of the way it was handled at the airport here because everyone was happy.
Right.
Everyone was taken care of.
Right.
And they had a food truck.
I'm sure. I mean, just what I saw where I was incredible.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The precision, I mean, and it always is in aviation, how people care for one another and how smoothly things go. And part of it's the training. We all have a similar vocabulary and language and way of thinking. And so it's all, we're all just there to support each other.
I believe that. Do you ever watch Mayday Mayday or 7-4?
My favorite as a kid.
7-4, the pilot who's...
7-4 gear.
7-4 gear, I love that one.
Mentor pilot.
Absolutely great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got common sense, he's got ethics, he's got kindness, and he's also very much spot on when it comes to what's happening in the industry.
Yep.
That's 7-4 gear.
7-4 gear.
And just look it up on YouTube. Anyway.
I like a Swedish pilot called Mentor Pilot.
I love him.
Okay.
He's great.
He's my favorite.
He's really good. Very technical.
He did a great one on the MH370 disaster recently.
Oh, did he?
Where, that was years ago, but he just did a let's review all the findings now in 2024.
Yep.
And
I haven't seen that one. What were some of his findings? Well, talk about first of all.
More morbid.
A little bit about the incident.
MH370?
Yeah.
The plane that, Malaysian Airlines plane that was supposed to check into another ATC sector. I forget exactly where it was. They did not show up.
And
no one has found it since.
They found a bit of the wing, or a bit of a tail somewhere on a beach somewhere, but that was it. And I suppose because it went down where there must have been a huge crevasse in the ocean. But that was a tragedy. How did he talk about that?
Well, I mean, the gist is that with new information and some very advanced analysis, like how the aircraft was able to connect to different satellite systems, and at some periods it did, and then it didn't, and based on basically like seeing the time of, well, the message was sent at this time, but it was received at this time, they were able to figure out much more accurate location data, and it basically made it seem all the more that it was a deliberate action.
Did he not turn around a little bit and come back a bit?
Well, he turned around. He followed what now looks to be like a VOR airway, which is a radio airway, so you don't do that if you're incapacitated. And he took it to a specific waypoint and then made a turn, but I forget specifically what it was. The Mentor Pilot video went over this new analysis that showed that probably during the last moment, the pilot was kind of banking like this, almost like doing a goodbye flight, touring over where it was going to put down, which would not happen in a everyone's incapacitated autopilot ran out of fuel situation. No. It seems like it was hand flown to the crash site.
Yeah, and that is a very eerie thought. But there was it the Golden Wings? What was it called? Something Wings aircraft where the pilot actually took it in?
This is the German Wings.
German Wings.
Yeah.
That was a shock.
Yeah, well that changed cockpit access rules and things like that, I believe. Where now you need to have someone in the cockpit at all times. So
two people in the cockpit.
Two people. So if the pilot needs to use the bathroom, I actually have a friend who's a flight attendant right now. Yeah. She says she's got to go in the cockpit and sit in the jump seat until he gets back.
Yeah, and by the way, which airline does she fly with?
PSA.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm blanking. PSA is the 3-letter code. Blue Streak is the call sign, but I'm blanking on the name of the airline. It's not Piedmont, but it's one of the
Piedmont
other
was bought by Allegheny, which was bought by US Air eventually.
Piedmont still exists. is its own
On its
independent
own?
thing. Yeah,
Good for it.
they're under American Eagle.
Oh, because I remember when Piedmont.
SkyWest. She worked for
SkyWest.
Yeah, I believe that's PSA.
Okay. Well, if you want to become a pilot, I highly recommend it. But if you want to become a flight attendant, I highly recommend that also.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much.
She says she's the happiest she's ever been.
It was a happy place to work. I loved all the customers, and the people I worked with were fabulous. They were all 20, 30 years younger than I am.
Yep.
And you're not supposed to agree with that. You're supposed to say, oh, how could that happen?
No, I'm listening.
Yeah, it's true. But
Wait, no, that is actually interesting. They were 20, 30 years younger than you.
yeah.
So, okay.
They were wonderful, still are, and I would never have left had it not been for COVID. Because
Right.
that was my happy place.
Right.
Every place I am is my happy place, but I had 53 rejections between the ages of 18 and 22
Right.
because I was too short.
Okay.
And that was all over Canada.
For flight attendant positions?
Yeah.
My friend had rejections because she's too tall.
Even now.
Yeah.
Oh, she could sue on that one. But
So
unless, of course, it's a very tiny aircraft.
I think she's 5'11", and the regional carriers flies
Yeah.
some very small aircraft where you can hit your head.
Yeah, regional carrier.
Yeah.
But JetBlue had me touch a dot on the wall, and that was the first time I freaked out during my interview because I realized I wasn't too short for JetBlue.
Right.
And that's because of the Disabilities Act,
Okay.
because they consider being vertically challenged a disability.
Okay. So they can't discriminate.
They can't
against
discriminate against
them.
me.
You
And
think as in an aircraft, the shorter you are, kind of the better.
it is for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was closer to the ground. I was always the first one who
Closer to the
landed.
ground, you can fit in the cockpit. They want shorter pilots, all that stuff. If you're in the Air Force, they want
What's really funny, I don't know whether you know how small an Embraer cockpit is.
No.
Okay. Well, I flew with Preston. We're wonderful. All my flight attendants were absolutely fabulous. But
Yeah.
Preston was 6'4",
Okay.
former football player.
Okay.
And
Any cockpit, that's a little
And
big.
so he went up. And when he came out, for the rest of the flight, he was like this. He said, oh, I was in a sardine can. I can't believe it. Heather, help me, because I was a muscular therapist. But that was really funny. He never did that again. But I was always sent up. So I fit in.
I'll encourage everyone to fly, but it might be difficult if you're very large. It might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's the only sad thing.
Yeah, you mean...
Well, especially like in a Cessna 172, if you're 6'4" and have a football player build, you could do it, but you're in the sardine can.
For sure. I wonder what aircraft could be used for that. Piper Cub.
Probably not. Well, I mean, no.
DC-3.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, if you want to fly in like a big twin or something, that would probably work out. Or, I mean, even a Piper Dakota is like bigger than a Piper Cherokee on the inside.
Question.
Yeah.
You said you had your multi-engine rating.
Yes.
What aircraft did you get that on, if you don't mind telling me?
I finished it on a Piper Seneca.
Did you?
Piper Seneca 2, yeah, with two turbocharged engines.
They're all pretty much computerized, eh? In the Seneca?
No, Seneca, I forget I feel like a bad pilot. What year was that plane?
He's only 24. What year could it be?
It was early 70s.
Oh, the aircraft.
Yeah.
Ah.
Not computerized. It actually had the most analog instruments I've flown in, because it had most of the aircraft now. At least we replaced the old vacuum-powered attitude indicator and heading indicator with like Garmin G5s or something, which are like these digital ones. But it had the original heading indicator that would precess, which is a phenomenon with the gyroscope where it gets out of sync. And I constantly had ATC. I told you heading this. Like, are you actually heading this? So I had to learn how to fly IFR in a very antiquated aircraft.
No regrets, though.
No regrets.
Okay.
Oh my God, better training experience, and I flew that thing in real IFR, and that was probably the most fun I ever had. Where I'm like, I'm flying a real aircraft, 2 engines, turbocharged. I can go into icing. I'm with analog instruments.
Live and learn.
Right.
Do you want to become a real aviation pilot as your career, or are you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you do.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're rated in Europe, which is good. We talked about perhaps one of the other airlines that you'd like to fly with, the Emirates or Al Ittihad or something like that.
Well, I have 900 hours now. To get my airline transport license, I need another 600 hours. So I'm working on becoming a flight instructor to kind of finish up and close that gap.
Yeah.
I'm also, later today, I'll be in Canada, and I'm planning on not leaving Canada till I have my Canadian license. I'm taking a Canadian license conversion while I'm there.
What airport?
I'll probably do it at St. Hubert.
That's where I used to fly out of St. Hubert. We talked about that. That's just on the south shore of Montreal, folks.
Do you know Air Richelieu?
Air Richelieu.
Yeah.
No, it's right on the river, I guess.
No, well, they're like a college at that airport. And so,
No, I had to go to Sir George Williams University for ground school.
Yeah.
And then I flew. I only did flying
Yeah.
out of the airport, so there was no school there for me at that time.
No, well, now there is.
Oh, well, hello.
Yeah.
I would love to go back and do that, but I'm not going
It's a cool
to.
place. It has a little cafe on the top of it too, so you can sit and like watch all the airplanes if you ever go to St. Hubert. But I'm going to take my written conversion exams there. I already have my Canadian medical certificate.
Well, you fly with your doctor. What does he do? Take your pulse at 10,000 feet?
We're good friends. I've known him for my whole life. I'm actually named after him. I told you my name's Rocky.
Jack Rocky.
Yeah, but his name is Rocky.
Oh.
And my dad liked his name. And
Well, of
so
course.
I was having a checkup and he told me, hey, the eclipse is happening. He knew another pilot during the last eclipse in like 2017, and the other pilot tried to fly him, but there was some issue, like they couldn't get clearance to land or they couldn't find parking and they missed it. And so he said, you're going to take me on your plane. He didn't ask. He said, you're going to take me because I know you're a pilot and you're not going to miss or there's going to be severe consequences for
Yes,
you.
remember the next time you have an appendectomy, I'll take out your lung.
Exactly. And so I said, all right, yeah, well, I can't refuse that.
And you were with your dad too, so you had a four-seater.
And I was with my dad, and he also told me that you need to take your father because he is really excited for this and he will love you forever if you take him. So this was an adventure orchestrated and commanded by my primary care doctor.
Yeah, well, shout out, because I'm going to give this on YouTube, so you'll have
Okay.
it for your ever-loving collection
Oh, cool.
of videos.
So shout out Dr. Becker.
Dr. Becker,
Yeah.
come on up and see us in Newport, Vermont, and bring this gentleman's father with you. We'd love to have all of you come and stay. Anyway, I'm going to close off the show now, but I'll tell you, Rocky Breslow, just so great to have you here.
It's incredible to be here, Heather.
And as a guest at my little Airbnb, I hope everything was to your liking.
Oh yeah, I would recommend.
You have to, because
Yes.
I'm the one who has the key to the front door.
Yes.
But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Happy landings, always, and keep the blue side up.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for watching Life is Good. We're doing another show with Scott Winnick. You may have already seen it. I don't know how this is going to be sequenced, but our little airport up in Coventry is well worth looking at if you want to become a pilot or go up for a ride around this beautiful area and just take yourself a 1-hour enjoyment ride.
It's the coolest airport.
It is a cool airport. We've got wonderful people who are there, and they're all friendly, and they know what they're doing. And even if you just want to walk around and look at the aircraft that are parked there, it's just phenomenal. I love that. So thanks for watching. See you next week, and mwah, life is good.